What's going on, people? We are back here at Scriptly Adapted to bring you, the people, another great film. We watched the Oscar. You just couldn't wait till I did my intro.
Sorry, I was really excited about it. I had to get it in,
Guys, we're here to watch The Whale. It was an Oscar-nominated film starring Brendan Fraser. And the Oscar goes to Brendan Fraser. That's how it's gonna go.
It's not WWE. They're not, there's no ring announcer.
And the Oscar goes to... It's amazing. Oh. Brendan Fraser. That's how
you think they're gonna cry?
Am I? Well, he's gonna cry because your boy is winning that Oscar come Oscar night. The film was very good. Darren Aronofsky's newest film gets right in your face with emotions and faith and love and hurt and pain and obesity and listen, he runs the gambit on emotions in this film.
There's really just one emotion.
No, there's not one emotion. There's a lot of stuff going on in this film, guys.
There's a lot of context, and I really enjoyed it because I think it really does highlight a lot, and there's a lot of metaphors, there's a lot of things that can be dissected. We're not going to give you everything, we'll give you a good taste, you know what I mean? But
he tasted a lot in that film.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize, I didn't even say that on purpose.
He tasted a lot.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Woo! Yikes. I mean, listen, the film is Darren Aronofsky's signature all over, right? He sucks you into the world. He makes you feel you're standing right in that living room, and you're seeing and hearing and feeling everything these characters are going through. It is full of emotion, man. And the whole film takes place inside a house. That's it. They don't go outside.
It's based on a stage play.
It's based on a stage play.
They
don't go outside. It's very good.
Okay, so there's a lot of things to dissect here. I think the first thing, and the most obvious, right, is his obesity. We have to dissect, he doesn't think much of himself. Mm-hmm. He's not very happy with his life or what he's accomplished after losing, his lover, not being able to help him, not being able to save him. So I think what he did was, subconsciously, was thinking he couldn't save his partner, he would do the same thing to himself as punishment almost. And that's partly how I looked at it. And then, the control aspect, he couldn't control many things in his life, but the one thing he could control was what he put in his mouth, even though there is no control. He's kind of out of control at this point. Yeah. You have the relationship between him and his sister, his daughter, him and his ex-wife, and him and the friend of his that comes and takes care of him, who's a nurse. And it was interesting because I don't know if you noticed, but the whole film was very kind of one line, one note, but there were all these subtexts of emotions underneath that you could kind of dive into.
Listen, and piggybacking off of that for a second, all these different characters that he is coming into contact with, that he's building relationships with or has a relationship with already, shows you the layers of personality that he's actually around on a constant basis, right? His daughter is, she ain't happy. She was left when she was 8 years old. She's angry, but also sad and also upset. It is a whirlwind of stuff going on. And then he meets a young man who's there to save him spiritually. Yeah. But then finds in turn that he's saved himself. It is a deep film, and Aronofsky doesn't skip a beat with this.
He's very similar in his actual look and style of the film, very similar to David Fincher, those very muted tones, browns and taupes and beiges and darkness.
Grays.
And I think it was obviously just to set the tone for what you're watching. I personally thought it was very interesting too because Brendan Fraser's character, like we said, is very complicated. There's a lot of stuff going on, but the acting was just so simplistic. There was no complicatedness of it was effortless. There was no when you watched him on screen, it wasn't like you thought to yourself, wow, he really had to study this, you know? Like, no, it was just, you know, him being...
It was natural.
A character.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it felt authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
The transformation he had to go through was crazy, for lack of a better word.
What, like over 400 pounds?
About 600 pounds. He's about 600 pounds. And it's almost like the weight of himself is a metaphor for the weight he's taken on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Around him personally.
And it's interesting too because the movie's called The Whale, right? Which naturally on the surface you think that
he looks like a whale, right?
He's big as a whale, or whatever. But I think it's much deeper than that because Moby Dick, the story of Moby Dick, it was something that he was teaching his students. He was an online English or literary professor, right? And there's an essay that he keeps reciting to himself when he gets super excited, because at that weight, even laughing upset his whole internal structure, like it could kill him. And there's one essay that he keeps reciting to himself that is kind of just a beautiful summation of the novel, and it's his daughter's essay that she wrote many years prior to that. And we don't learn that until almost the end of the film. But it's just it was very beautifully done. It was very simple. And it's interesting too, because there's always that look where you have people like walking across the porch, like the pizza delivery man. And he always sees, even if he does know who it is, he always just watches their shadow as they come and go. And I think it was kind of a subtext too of like, he wanted to be super involved. He wanted to be, really out there and in people's lives. But he was just watching everything from the shadows.
Right. That was his only connection to the outside world. Because
he was ashamed. He was just living in a pile of shame. And
it was so Kate, I felt so sad for my man. It was so heartbreaking. It was. Because you felt for him so much, where yes, he made some really bad mistakes. But all your life trying to search for the one thing you actually did well, or the one thing that you did good that you're proud of, not knowing what it is until the very end, right?
Yeah.
Is heartbreaking, but satisfying because he at least got to experience that.
Well, it's interesting too. As he was telling his daughter,
trying not to cry here.
I need you to put yourself together here.
I am.
I need you to just bring it back. Like, dial it back a little bit. You okay?
Yep, I'm good.
All right.
Good.
Just one last trickle. Okay. Anyway. Have you composed yourself?
I'm good.
All right. Anyway, so, he keeps telling his daughter that she's amazing and, she's a beautiful person. And the character is, like, awful.
Awful kid.
Not evil, but just, your typical teenage angst and a little bit of rebellion thrown in there. But he keeps telling her, you don't know how amazing you are. You don't know how wonderful you are. Now, we don't know if that's coming also from his guilt or because, too, I think he finds the good in everyone around him except for himself. And, I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly when you talked about the whale, the weight of not only literally him, but everything that he's taken on in his life. There was just so many like metaphors and
But there's something else.
Symbolism.
And it's just about life, period, right? Like how life will how you may think you are in the happiest moment of your world, of your life, and then something gets thrown in that takes you off course completely, that some may not be able to bounce back from.
Right.
And in this case, trying to bounce back from it was incredibly difficult, and which eventually led to his weight gain and his depression and all of these things. And it also just shows you that things happen, and depending on how we handle them in the now, could determine what our future looks like down the line.
As he was teaching his class, he never had the camera on because he didn't want his students to see what he looked like, right? Yeah. Except for almost the last scene, where he turns the camera on. And you know what I thought was so interesting, and I don't know if you noticed this, but his students' reactions also ran the full gamut. You had some students that were sitting there in shock, some students that like most of them were in shock, but then you had one student or two students like laughing. You had another student take out their phone, you know, like, and it was just so interesting to me because right before that class, he had sent them an assignment saying, I want you to write something so honest. But yet he wasn't being honest. He wasn't being transformative. He wasn't being transparent, you know?
Well, that's the
with his
reason why he
class.
turned on the mic.
Right,
at
but
the,
but seeing their reactions was a beautiful rounding out of that too. Like, because you automatically assume that everyone's going to be like, oh my God, or having a reaction that you would think would be appropriate. Like, I think that scene was probably the most important scene because it showed that, you know, life can be messy and life can be unfair and life can be hurtful and it can also be beautiful, but he wasn't giving any of them a chance to really express their true feelings, whether they were writing them down or expressing them in class.
Yeah.
The point of this course is to learn how to write clearly and persuasively. Think about that. Think about the truth of your argument.
Listen, man,
was
I had to
amazing.
sleep on it. I couldn't comment on it
was
immediately.
heavy.
It's heavy. It does a lot where you feel everything Charlie, the character, is feeling. You know, from the binge eating to the crying to the just overall sadness and the physical constraints he had in his home, and you feel everything.
Yeah.
And Aronofsky is a master of that. You feel everything. Good, bad, awkward, tension, all of that. The Whale, guys. Check
Yeah.
it out. Now playing wherever your local theater is or movie house or whatever that is.
Outside of the house, guys.
Yeah, Brendan Fraser. And the Oscar goes to
Brendan,
you, Brendan Fraser. You.
you just
Check out The Whale, y'all. Later.